described as grotesque acts of violence fuelled by malicious and ignorant social media posts. Now, Boris Johnson has suggested Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and Home Secretary Yvette Cooper are to blame for the most recent deaths in the Channel after the government scrapped the Rwanda plan. It follows a tragic incident this week where 12 lost their lives when a boat capsized, the deadliest crossing this year. Former Prime Minister Mr Johnson says the government must act.
It's time for Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper to admit that if you scrap a policy designed to save lives and you put nothing in its place, then you will be to blame.
It comes as Germany is considering using British-funded facilities in Rwanda to deport migrants entering the European Union. It comes as Berlin faces mounting pressure to curb illegal migration following last month's ISIS-linked stabbing at a festival. German officials think the EU should repurpose the asylum facilities that Britain set up, which were recently scrapped by Sir Keir Starmer's government. Now, the government says it has no plans to send prisoners to Estonia, addressing rumours on policies to ease overcrowded jails. It comes as the UK prison population hit a record high this morning, now reaching 88,521 inmates, 171 more than last week's peak. Downing Street insists that building more prisons remains a key priority, and a 10-year strategy will be published this autumn to ensure enough space for dangerous offenders. And in the US, a judge has ruled that Donald Trump's hush money sentencing will be delayed until after the November presidential election. New York Justice Juan Merchan granted the former president's wish to push back his sentencing. It's after Trump's lawyers accused state prosecutors and the court of election interference with less than 60 days until Election Day. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening and happy weekend to you. I have a massive update on the now infamous Manchester airport brawl between police and passengers in July. Do you remember this?
Stop kicking people! You don't camera! Why are you taking off? Move back! Shut up! Move back! Oh! Move back! Say! Move back! Oi! Shut up! Move back!
The nation was up in arms after that clip did the rounds online, but some of us called for more context. The context eventually came through this leaked CCTV footage showing two men violently swinging their fists at police officers, with one young female officer reported as having suffered a broken nose. The leaked footage was published by the Manchester Evening News. Then the lads involved held a Woe Is Me press conference and demanded to know who leaks the footage to the press.
Has been a deliberate attempt to smear the family. The family have been subjected to horrific racist and Islamophobic abuse on social media. And there has been a campaign of disinformation in an attempt to justify alleged police violence. As far as we are aware, there have been no proactive attempts by the GMP to monitor or to investigate the further hate crimes perpetrated against this family.
It quite frankly doesn't matter who leaked it to the press. What's important is that it was leaked and it was made public. And you would have thought that by now, with the full story published for the world to see, that we could have at least expected some criminal charges for the men seen attacking police officers in that footage. Well, not in backwards Britain, where nothing makes sense, of course. Because today, a new criminal investigation has been launched, but not the one you were expecting. The Manchester Evening News has received letters from the police watchdog, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, seeking access to the CCTV footage and demanding the newspaper reveal how it got hold of the clip. Let me be quite clear for anyone who isn't aware. Asking journalists to reveal their sources is an outrageous attack, not only on the freedom of the press, but the very foundations of our democracy too. Journalists, let me tell you, would rather go to prison than rat on their sources who, day after day, week after week and year after year, lend their utmost trust to journalists in exchange for exposing the truth for the world to see. The fact the police watchdog seems more concerned with how local newspaper reporters got hold of crucial CCTV footage over what's happening with the men seen taking lumps out of our brave coppers is Orwellian, to say the least. Why have these men not been charged yet? What is the delay? We've shown how quickly we can act, how decisively we can act when it comes to punishing crimes when they take place. Just look at everyone who's been banged up off the back of the riots. So why isn't that same swift and clinical justice process being applied here? Because the longer this charade goes on, the more the British public will begin to feel like this really is a two-tier country after all. But let's get the thoughts of my panel now. John Sargent, former BBC and ITV chief political correspondent. Alex Armstrong, the political commentator and the Labour Party activist. Susie Stride. Talking of strides, I'm going to take a big one over here. Good evening to you all.
Evening.
John Sargent, what was your take on this today? As a veteran journalist of many decades, the police asking newspaper reporters to reveal their sources, first of all.
Well, they shouldn't. They shouldn't reveal their sources, and it's extremely important if you're a reporter, as I was for many years. It's so important to be able to say to people, tell me what you think, tell me what your evidence is. I will protect your source. And I was in a position once, for me, a famous case where I refused to reveal my sources, knowing I might go to prison. But I just thought I can't, because in fact, if I reveal my sources, it all goes wrong. The main sources you often get, particularly in political reporting, usually come from the government, which makes it even more serious. So if you're leaked something, as I was from very senior government sources, turned out it was Chancellor of the Exchequer. You know, I mean, but
Do you want to tell us who it is now?
I can tell you. I can tell you who it was. No, he knows, and I've admitted that he knew, and I knew. But no, these things are very, very critical. Otherwise, you simply there's less of a chance of you hearing what the truth is. Now, in this particular case, the truth is obviously pretty murky. There are all sorts of.
Is it murky?
No, it's
I mean,
no.
Wait
a moment. No, it's easy to judge from the pictures. Oh, well, that's wrong, and then you see another picture. Say, oh, that's wrong. But what you've got to do is to try and get some idea of what the overall story was. Now, we've all got our different theories as to what actually happened at the airport and who did what when and in what particular sequence. But it's extremely difficult. What you need, I'm afraid, is an old-fashioned trial where people are charged, where barristers give their evidence, where, in fact, you argue the whole thing out and you come to some kind of attempt at justice. That's it.
Alex, my problem is we do need to see the course of justice served, you know, whether they're charged and go to trial or they're let off. We need a decision. But when the IOPC are opening new investigations into how local newspaper reporters got access to CCTV footage, it just feels like their priorities are all wrong.
It's an egregious attack on democracy, first of all. And to me, it's this sort of sign of the times that we're living in now, where the authorities feel emboldened to take this kind of action. We've seen quite a lot of police action against ordinary citizens and those who are criminals, of course, as well. But we've seen a lot of it lately, and I'm majorly concerned that the authorities of this country feel like they're getting this egregious power that politicians will not stop them from using. As what John says, we've got to protect journalistic integrity, both online for individual independent people who want to report the news themselves, but for actual journalists too. And I feel both of those are massively under threat currently.
Susie, we saw with the riots how quickly we can act when we need to. Why hasn't this case been concluded yet?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what's being said here. I think it is concerning. And I think we do need to be careful because I think, the public aren't silly, and the public look at things like this and think, actually, what is going on? And I just think, one of the great things about this country is we are a democracy. We're not up there with all these countries that have corruption and weird things going on. This is one of the things that we're proud of as a country. And I do think we need to be careful. And I do think this seems a little bit odd, to say the least. But, yeah...
Do you think we live in a two-tier country? when it comes to the police, to the justice system?
I wouldn't use that language, and I wouldn't use that language. But what I would say is, I think again, the British public aren't stupid, and they smell when things are a bit odd.
Yeah.
And why are we focusing on certain things? And why do we go after certain things and not other things? And I said this before when the police went after someone who had taken down a flag, and I won't go into the details of it. And I said, well, people are getting bricks thrown through their windows, and they call the police, and no one's coming. And why is there certain priorities? And so I have a bit of a problem when it comes to that, because I just think there's an injustice there about why certain groups who maybe have big lobby groups get loads of support. But yeah, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, where are the charges? Where are the charges? That's what people want to know. That's why people feel there's a two-tier system in this country, because they don't feel like justice is actually being served. The fact that the police are spending time getting CCTV footage or finding out the source of that is completely the wrong priority. They need to be going after people. I mean, look, whatever happened, the police were attacked. Whatever happened, police were assaulted that night, and we do need to press for justice in this country. Otherwise, the British public are going to rebel.
John, but also, what we need is this idea of, the old shout of "see you in court." I mean, the assumption was, given time, it will be discussed fully in court. It may take a bit of time to collect all the evidence, but that is our system. If you say, oh, no, it's not that, all you do is have CCTV, social media sorted out, attention span 10 seconds.
But, John, can I ask you?
It's not like that. It shouldn't be like that. It should be now, let's all calm down. Let's make sure that the charges are put and they're put in a court, and that is our system.
Yeah, but where are they?
It's process.
Yeah, but where are they, John?
I know. And people then get overexcited, think, oh, can't we just do it quickly? But John, do it straight away? No.
John, let me ask you. We saw how quickly we can act when it comes to the rioters.
Sure.
People they're in court and getting banged up within 3 days of the fact. Why is there such a difference here? What's the problem?
Because in a way, it may seem odd, but the riots were a simple, straightforward threat of a breakdown in order. So the whole idea of, look, you can argue about these topics, which everyone did, but the joy of that, if you like, for people like me, was that the action was swift. Look, that we must sort out this question of rioting, and we can't have disorder. Then we can have discussion, then we can have argument, then we can have judgment, we can have justice. But what we can't do is the mob deciding what we're going to do. Now, in this case, it's not like that. There's not a mob involved. There's no reason why, if they just keep calm, carry out the normal procedure, we'll get there.
But John, it won't be instant. There was a mob. After the attacks, we saw that there were protests. There were pro-Palestine protests, I think, outside demanding justice for these guys.
And where did they get?
And they held a press conference. And so there was a mob. There was a pressure on the government to not act. There was clear pressure from those people saying that we've been a subject of Islamophobia and racism, all this stuff, which doesn't matter when it comes to the case of have they assaulted police officers?
When it came to violence, when it came to the simple question of who is being violent, have they broken the law, can action be taken against them, it was amazingly efficient, as you've seen in the court.
Well, of course, for the riots it was, but
for the riots,
for these guys, absolutely not.
No, for this often. This is a more complicated thing. It involves a family, it involves various members, it involves the police, it involves now the Manchester Evening News. That cannot be resolved in a discussion like this. It can't. No, it has to be taken. You've just got to take it steady.
Yeah. OK, well, look, it is... Fine, I get your point, but when the IOPC says we're opening an investigation into how local newspaper reporters got hold of CCTV footage, and we've heard nothing else about the two lads involved.
No, I agree.
The two men involved who were seen smashing police officers, allegedly breaking the nose of a young female officer.
Sure.
It raises questions. I think it's a fair point. Sure. The IOPC said in a statement, following a press conference on the 6th of August, when concerns were raised about the source of a video provided to the media, we received a conduct referral from Greater Manchester Police. This referral, whilst considering other possibilities, relates to whether someone employed by the force may have shared footage relating to an active police investigation without a legitimate policing purpose. We are in the early stages of an independent investigation, which will consider whether there is any evidence to suggest this was provided by someone working for GMP, and if so, the justification for this. So basically, long story short, they seem to have a hunch that maybe the CCTV came from somebody at the airport, or maybe a copper from within their own ranks. Anyway, still to come, he came out swinging in the face of widespread outrage over his plans to cut winter fuel payments earlier this week.
No Prime Minister wants to do what we have to do in relation to the winter fuel allowance.
But trouble's brewing for Starmer after a rebel Labour MP warns pensioners could die this winter if the cut goes ahead. Labour are also said to be scrapping the single-person council tax discount too, which would affect, by the way, widowers of all people. So, does Labour have it in for British pensioners? I'll get the expert analysis of former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood very soon. But up next, as a rioter who helped set fire to a hotel in Rotherham gets 9 years in jail, the longest yet for the disorder that broke out last month. Is that sentence fair? Former police officer Graham Weston goes head-to-head with political commentator Jess Gill. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Club Classique, previously known as Méthode Club Classique, is South Africa's answer to the famous French fizz.
They basically have to be made in South Africa and also by the traditional method. So it's exactly the same method as champagne, but is it made in a different place. So they can't call it champagne because it's not made in Champagne, but it's very similar.
And on the other hand, in Prosecco, it all happens in a sort of great vat.
Yes,
doesn't it?
Yes.
Which is why Prosecco tastes different from other sparkling wines.
Prosecco will taste much more fruity because you don't have the thing called lees aging. Insert the wine with brioche, biscuity, toasty flavours and aromas, which makes it much more complex.
Here we've got a thing called Journey's End.
Yes.
And would you like to tell us, I've said that people didn't want to splash out on champers. They might want to go the Cap Classique route.
Yes.
What would they be saving? How much might that cost in a shop?
So this one here will cost you about £17. So it is considerably, I guess, better value for money than champagne.
But I'd also comment that it's probably a good deal cheaper than English sparkling wine, which is interesting.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, this second one is called Kleiner Salzer.
It is, yes.
And you told me this is a little more expensive than the first one.
It is.
What price were we talking about here?
About 20.
About 20.
Yes.
Not vastly more.
No.
Are we going to taste £3 worth of improvement? Oh, and by the way, it went so beautifully with the cheese, just as you advised. Are South African sparkling wines, Cap Classique, are they pretty well available in English wine shops, British wine shops?
They are, yes. You can find them in all of the supermarkets. Graham Beck, and that's on offer at the moment, actually. That's £11.99 from Waitrose, which is exceptional value.
That is insane.
Yes, it is. And you can also, so I bought with me today, so this is a Pinot Noir only, so that's a rosé sparkling.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Time now for our head-to-head. And the rioter who helped set fire to a hotel full of asylum seekers in Rotherham during last month's disorder has been handed the harshest prison sentence yet. Thomas Burley was today given a 9-year sentence after pleading guilty to arson with intent to endanger life, violent disorder and possessing an offensive weapon. The 27-year-old was also filmed throwing missiles at the police and squaring up to officers whilst waving a baton. The judge condemned his case as, quote, unquestionably one of the most serious he dealt with in relation to the riots, adding that Burley had engaged in, quote, grotesque acts of violence fuelled by malicious and ignorant social media posts. So tonight I'm asking, is the 9-year sentence fair? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at GBNews, and whilst you're there voting the poll, I'll bring you the results very, very shortly. But going head-to-head on this first are former police officer Graham Wetton and the political commentator Jess Gill. Good evening to you both. Thank you for joining me. Graham, let's start with you. 9 years, the most severe sentence yet for rioters. Is it fair?
I think when you look at the offences that he was charged with and he actually pleaded guilty to, arson with intent to endanger life carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. So I think when you look at that, coupled with also pleaded guilty to violent disorder, maximum 5 years, also pleaded guilty to offensive weapon, which was a police baton, which clearly he didn't have lawfully. So I think when you look at the three offences, and the judge's comments, who have set in other cases, the most serious, described him as a dangerous offender, I think 9 years is a fair sentence for that. We need to take the three offences he pleaded guilty to.
Yeah, I mean, it was awful scenes from that hotel in Rotherham. I mean, anyone can completely condemn it. But Jess, you feel maybe 9 years is a bit too much?
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue that 9 years is a fair prison sentence, considering the fact that if we look at the Leeds riots beforehand or the riots in Whitechapel just beforehand, or even if we take a few years back with Black Lives Matter and the damage to property and just general risk of lives, when you look at the fact that there was barely any persecution with that, I think it's hard to argue that this is just. The matter of the fact is that the fact that these things are happening is due to the failure of the police and the failure that the British people don't feel like they're there for them. I think you could say that 9 years would be fair in a system where grooming gang perpetuators would have received a fair sentence. But time and time we've seen again that people who have been in grooming gangs, who have groomed, raped and abused young children, young girls, have been let off with an easier sentence. So no, I don't think 9 years is fair when you look at the law like that.
So, Graham, I guess the argument is that there was widespread disorder. The CPS, well, the judges at least, needed to make a point about quelling it at source, and this was making an example of someone to make sure no future riots took place.
I'm not so sure it's about making an example of somebody, and I think you can't compare other offences or other instances, other occasions, etc. He's pleaded guilty to arson with intent to endanger life. He was clearly trying to set fire to a building with people inside where their lives were going to be endangered. That's a very serious offence. Grooming is a serious offence, but you're actually looking here to kill somebody, to take their life away from them with arson with intent to endanger their life. So I think, the sentences match the offences he's pleaded guilty to. So he's admitted these offences, plus he admitted violent disorder. So it's not just one offence. You've got a number of offences here, and the impact, the likelihood that people could have died in those buildings, horribly as well, being burnt to death in a building. That's what he was trying to do here. It's difficult. You can't really compare one offence with a different because the circumstances and the surroundings, the context are all different. So you can't compare one with another one. But clearly, the judge here has looked at this, and this isn't about failings in policing. The judge's senses from the police have identified him and arrested him, and he's then pleaded guilty. So they gathered all the evidence against him, and he's pleaded guilty to this. The judge has looked at this, described him as a dangerous offender, and the worst case he's sat in judgment on. So for me, it's a very just sentence. I'm not sure what you would want him to get as a lesser sentence than 9 years. Anything less than that for me would be just a joke for justice.
Jess, you've got to admit as well that if you try and set fire to a building with people inside, whether you think the 9 years is excessive or not, you've got to expect, surely, to go to prison for a good chunk of time.
Yeah, I'm not saying he should be let off without punishment, of course not, and I'm not saying that you should set fire to any building at all. But I think you have to put it into context here. Again, there is a two-tier police system, and I think you can compare cases and situations where the law hasn't struck down as hard on people who have groomed children and groomed young girls, or, again, protesters when it comes on a different matter, when it comes to Palestine protesters, for example, or like I said, Black Lives Matter protests, or look at the Leeds protests. And I think when you put that into consideration, but also the fact that the reason why these protests, why these riots were happening to begin with, is because of a failure of police. And I think that needs to be recognised, that the police, especially in places like Rochdale or Rotherham, they have turned the other cheek. They have looked away when girls have come to them, and they've been failed by the police. So of course something like this, of course I don't think is a good thing, but this is the result of that.
Graham, beyond this case, of course, you think 9 years is justice served. But beyond this case, do you accept the points that there is this feeling now of two-tiered justice when it comes to judges, when it comes to how police handle protests and different crimes? Do you think there's any substance in that?
Well, this isn't a case of two-tier policing, because the police don't actually sentence. The police put these offenders before the court. It's up to the judges.
Of course, but when it comes to making arrests...
Sorry?
Of course, but when it comes to making arrests, for example, Jess cited the Palestine protest, there is a growing feeling in the country that some people are getting policed differently to others.
I think if you look at the pro-Palestinian protests, there's been several hundred arrests from those protests. So I don't think that's a just criticism either. There's been several hundred people arrested for what you might term more minor offences, public order type offences, disorder type offences, but not violent disorder. And not arson with intent to endanger lives. I think justice is applied fairly once someone gets to court, and it's applied by the judges. This isn't about police applying the justice. They will arrest the people if there's evidence of offences, as we've seen. In Rotherham, as we saw, there were some serious incidents taking place, and people have been arrested, pleaded guilty, and have been sentenced accordingly.
And Graham, just whilst you're here, I'm not sure if you heard the first part of the show where we were talking about the Manchester airport. You heard that. What do you make of that situation? Because, again, when we're comparing what we see in that instance and then comparing it to the riots of recent weeks, again, people are saying, well, hang on a minute, if we can bang people up very swiftly for disorder, why aren't these two lads who quite clearly are on CCTV attacking police officers, why aren't they dealt with in the same sort of swift way?
I think I heard what John Sargent was saying. I agree with him. That's a much more complex case. For one, the IOPC, Independent Office for Police Conduct, are dealing with the allegations of misconduct by the police officers. There's also then counter allegations by the police and by the people involved. So when you've got a complex case like that, with one independent body carrying out half of the investigation, the police have to wait for that part to be completed before you can put the whole thing together and then press charges against either a half or both parties involved. So it's a much more complex case. Plus, they've now got the added aspect of allegedly leak of information, leak of CCTV that's now been investigated. So it makes it a much more complex case than the one we've just been talking about, where the evidence is clearly in front of you, it's captured on body-worn video by the officers, no counter-allegations, no independent parties involved. It's a much more straightforward case than sadly, the Manchester airport. That will take some time for the IOPC to conclude their investigation.
Well, the IOPC, in my argument, could save a lot of time by not asking journalists for their sources. I mean, they're never going to give them up. Jess, last word to you.
Yeah, I just think on the topic of two-tier policing and law enforcement, I'm from Bolton, and in Bolton town centre, where I used to hang out with my friends as a teenager, you saw physically violent men in the town centre, Muslim men, a big group of them, going in, creating disruption, and the police did nothing about it. They were going back from the police. And to say that there isn't a two-tier policing system or a two-tier law and order, I think everyone can see is ridiculous.
OK, thank you both, former police officer Graham Weston and the political commentator Jess Gill. Thank you for joining me this evening. So, who do you agree with at home? As a rioter who set fire to an asylum seeker hotel in Rotherham is given 9 years, the strictest sentence yet for the riots, is the sentence too harsh? Dave, on X, you say, based on what could have been and the intent, no. It is not too long. Potential consequences were massive. Similar to what Graham had just said. Alex on X says, in context, yes, we're letting murderers and rapists off with less severe sentences, despite them having committed unforgivable crimes. And Becca on X says, politics aside, arson is a serious crime. Indeed. And your verdict is now in. 70% of you agree the sentence was too harsh. 30% of you say no, it wasn't. Interesting. OK, coming up, Sir Keir Starmer once accused the Tories of wanting to scrap winter fuel payments for pensioners.
Last year, the Prime Minister was apparently drawing up plans to remove the winter fuel allowance from pensioners.
Oh, we've got the receipts, haven't we? But now he's done it himself, and he's got another problem on his hands with a growing number of Labour heavyweights lining up to slam the decision. Former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood joins me in just a few minutes.
Hello, good evening. It's been a pretty soggy day for many southern areas, but across the north and west it's been very warm and sunny, and that theme is set to continue as we head into the weekend, as further heavy rain will arrive as a result of low pressure swirling around to the south of the UK. An easterly wind, though, will continue to bring in some low cloud to north and eastern areas, so some high and low cloud still to come once again tonight across eastern areas of the north. In the north and west, though, another dry and clear evening. Now, the heavy rain will push into parts of South Wales, northern areas of Devon as well overnight, but it should tend to fade away as we head into the morning just for a time. So it will be a cloudy but mild start to the day for most of us. Some sunshine around, however, particularly across northern areas. It's particularly parts of the Highlands down towards the central belt where we will see the best of the sunshine first thing, as well as southwestern areas of Scotland, in fact, as well as Northern Ireland. Plenty of warm sunshine temperatures already in the mid-teens at first thing. Another warm day to come for parts of northwestern England. A cloudier day, though, for parts of Wales and the Midlands. We've got the remnants of tonight's wet weather lingering in these areas first thing tomorrow, and that will probably develop into heavier showers, potentially some thundery downpours after lunchtime on Saturday. And across the south, it will be a slightly drier day, actually, but there is a risk of showers that will increase as the day goes on, as those showers push up from the near continent. So in any sunshine, it's feeling slightly warmer across the south, but still a pretty cool day for many southern and central areas. Very warm in the north and west. A more widely wet day to come on Sunday. Outbreaks of potentially torrential rainfall across much of England and Wales. It will come and go, but it could bring further disruption to travel and delays on the road. But in the north and west, it stays dry for now. However, from Monday, we return to a northwesterly wind, which brings in much cooler air. Bye-bye.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, there's trouble brewing for the Prime Minister ahead of the crunch vote on his government's plan to cut winter fuel payments in Parliament on Tuesday. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, the senior Labour MP Rachel Maskell has warned that pensioners will die from the cold if Rachel Reeves pushes ahead with the widely hated cut. And she's not the only Labour heavyweight uneasy with Starmer's policy. Andy Burnham, Ed Balls and even Diane Abbott have all slammed the decision to remove, the winter fuel allowance for the poorest pensioners. The government is also considering scrapping the single-person council tax discount, which would impact millions of widowed pensioners. I'm joined now by the former LBC political editor, Theo Usherwood. Good evening, Theo.
Very good evening to you, Ben.
Thank you for joining me. Simple question. Has Labour got a problem with pensioners? You've got the winter fuel allowance and now this news story, which is brewing about the single-person council tax discount being scrapped, which would affect primarily widowed pensioners.
Yes, so just to give you the details on this, we knew about this last week when it comes to the single person discount, which gives you 25% discount on your home when it comes to your council tax, and it affects around 4 to 5 million pensioners, around half of all those that make up the 8.4 million people that can apply for this. And it cuts around, on average, £543 from your average council tax band D. Now, you can make the argument, and many people do make the argument, that Labour, as you rightly say, Ben, it seems to have a problem with pensioners. But I think there might be something else going on here. If we go back to 2008 and you go back to the financial crash, before the financial crash, it was widely, I think, the received wisdom is that governments can help everybody. There's money to spend, and that Western governments can have what it takes to help every particular group. I think after 2008, when we ran up that huge deficit, things changed. And the new Conservative-led government with the coalition came in, and they made a decision that they couldn't help everybody, and they made a decision that actually the people they're going to prioritise were the elderly, were pensioners. And that's primarily because David Cameron and George Osborne knew that they could rely on the silver vote, and that's why they brought in things like the triple lock on pensions, which of course is fine when inflation is down, bubbling down at 2 or 3%, but when it goes up to 10, 11%, we saw a couple of years ago, it becomes really problematic. I think what Keir Starmer's trying to do is redraw the boundaries on who he wants to help, who Labour wants to help, and he's trying to switch away from pensioners and say, actually, that isn't where Labour is going to go. It's going to go towards, quote unquote, working people.
Yes, it's going to go to train drivers who are on, some of them 65, 70k a year. It's going to go on doctors. Pensioners
have fixed incomes.
Pensioners built this country. They have grafted for decades, and they are now the most vulnerable people in our nation. Why is Labour, the party of social justice, the caring, tolerant party, treating pensioners in such a rotten way? I think
you raised some important points there, Ben. I think they clearly, I think with this winter fuel allowance particularly, is they didn't show the political antennae to spot that this was going to be a huge problem.
Will they U-turn on it, do you think?
I think they're going to have to do something, because there's going to be a huge rebellion on Tuesday. They've already laid the ground, they've already set out their stall, the Labour hierarchy, as to how they deal with people, with MPs who vote against the government on particular issues. I mean, they removed the whip from 7 of their own MPs after they voted against the two-child benefit cap. So I think there's a real... Keir Starmer's got a problem with this. Now, look, we can look at the numbers yesterday from, say, the GB Energy vote, which sailed through by a majority of 250. The vote's not going to change. But I think more broadly, they're going to be MPs, Labour MPs, who are going to feel distinctly uncomfortable about voting with the government on Tuesday night, and they're going to have to go back to their constituents, and they're going to have to explain that decision, and it's going to be really difficult to do because there's ultimately no justification.
So you think the votes will go ahead? They won't pull the plug beforehand?
Well, they have to find £1.5 billion if they don't want to pull the plug.
Well, why don't they scrap the £11 billion on climate aid going to Africa?
Precisely. That's what I'm talking.
Why are they picking on pensioners?
That's precisely the point I'm making, is that actually they haven't shown the political antennae. It's £11.6 billion we're spending on overseas aid to fight climate change. And you end up in a situation, well, could you actually just front-load that money, instead of spending £11.6 billion, just spend, £10 billion, and actually then have some money left over so you can U-turn on this winter fuel allowance? It doesn't seem, politically, it seems really dumb.
But will they lose many votes from this, even if they go ahead with a single-person council tax discount? Because traditionally it's not the elderly generation who vote for Labour, right?
No, but I think it's what you just tapped into just now, which is, the party of social justice. It's the party of, the working person. And I think a lot of people will look at this, and a lot of MPs are already looking at this and feeling, OK, they may not be our voters instinctively, but these are not the values that we stand for.
Yeah,
and
OK.
Nice Labour bench.
All right, one more story I'm going to get through with you. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, and the Prime Minister have been busy hosting a small boat summit with law enforcement officials today. And predictably, Cooper was keen to focus on her government's smash the gangs policy.
Well, we're working closely now with other European law enforcement, other governments. The Prime Minister has had serious discussions with other European leaders about the importance of us going after this organised immigration crime that is making huge profits from this dangerous trade in people. And that's why we're focusing now on going after the gangs, expanding the work with Europol and with other European law enforcement organisations. That's where we think we can make significant progress.
I don't know what any of that means. It's just a load of buzzwords and hot air. Theo, this also comes off the back of Germany now, reports suggesting they will adopt something akin to the Rwanda scheme, where they use the facilities we paid for, British taxpayers, to process at least, not keep them there permanently, but process asylum seekers.
Yes, so we've already spent upwards of £250 million on this scheme, and of course it was the second day of Keir Starmer's government, and he pulled the plug on the Rwanda scheme. He said it was a gimmick and it wasn't ever going to become effective. I was speaking to Tony Smith, former director of UK Border Force, and he's actually quite a moderate expert on these issues. You can speak to people who are experts on these issues, and they take a much harder line than Tony. And he said to me, actually, you know what, this is. You know, Rwanda had its merits, and the Labour government was just too hasty. Just needed to take a step back. There was huge pressure politically from their own side, from Keir Starmer's own side, from people who said, you know, this was, unconscionable that we could deport people to Rwanda. But we hadn't gone through the process about whether there could be Rishi Sunak could try to change the law on it, but we hadn't yet gone through the process about whether we could implement the policy without withdrawing from the ECHR. And actually, Keir Starmer, this was the argument from Tony Smith, would have been wise just to take a step back, because it should come as no surprise what the Germans have said overnight, because we knew that there were mutterings in Europe when Rishi Sunak went over there for a G7 summit and met with European leaders. They didn't turn around and try and swat him away and say, this is an absolutely appalling idea, Prime Minister. No, we don't want to see it. No, they turned around and said, oh, actually, can you just expand on this? Because we've all got a problem with migration.
And it seems a bit fishy, Starmer going over for that press conference with Olaf Scholz, and then a couple of days later, this report that Germany is adopting our scheme that he axed. I mean, I'm not saying he went there to flog it to them, but, it does beg questions.
Well, the Rwandans are getting the money. We're not getting the money.
No.
They're making
of course. A massive waste of money. But do you think Starmer, in wake of the winter fuel allowance and this situation now with Rwanda, do you think he's proving himself a bit politically naive?
I think he got off to a flying start. That a lot of groundwork.
Really? What impressed you?
Well, in the first 2 weeks, he went to NATO. He went to he met with Joe Biden. He held a summit with mayors of all political colours, and it was generally a good first couple of weeks. Obviously, then we had the riots, and then for 2 or 3 weeks, government seemed to go to sleep. And it just feels the last week there've just been some really cack-handed decisions, starting with that announcement from the Foreign Secretary on the beginning of the week when it came to that arms embargo. A day after. That Hamas had shot 6 Israeli hostages in the back of the neck. It wasn't well timed. If we're going to make that decision, at least show a little bit of sensitivity and put it towards the end of the week and respect, what Hamas, who are the terrorists, they're done to Israel.
We're running out of time, unfortunately. If you're going to grade Labour high school style, what grade would you give them thus far? Overall
you
grade.
Put me on the spot.
Come on.
Overall grade, I'll give them C+.
C+, OK. sounds very generous. Theo Rushwood, former LBC political editor, thank you very much. OK, up next, apparently it's been the hottest summer ever. Can you believe it? But that'll be news to Brits, of course, who've had to put up with the coolest summer since 2015. So what's happened to so-called global warming, and when can we expect to get in on the action? I'll be asking the leader of the Climate Party, Ed Gemmell, when he joins me in just a few minutes. Back in a tick.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
70% of population will make a judgment on someone just by looking at them. And within 2-3 seconds, we make a decision if we like someone or not.
Really? Is it that quick?
So it's actually very, very fast. So before we have a chance to kind of express what we want to say, our subconscious mind is kind of looking for clues. So you look at someone and you look at their, for example, I don't know, the watch they're wearing, maybe the makeup. I spent literally my whole childhood learning, being absolutely mesmerized by my mom's ability to choose different style of clothing for different style personalities. British definitely take a pride in their appearance. They do spend time to look good. There is a lot of amazing British designers. For me, it was always about that feeling that I've learned from my mom's shop, how the people were living, buying certain things. And I was like, oh my God, they look happy. They've got this big smile on their face. My main objective always was to make people feel good. So now as a stylist, I help them to go through style therapy. I help them to discover colors that are good for their colors that they wear them close to their face, but also it sets the tone for their wardrobe. And then we look at the outfit formula. So it's, yeah. When I look at Ellie's dress sense, I was just thinking, OK, she likes to be polished.
I do like to be polished.
Exactly. Elegant, timeless. I look at the reference to the dress you're wearing today. It's that kind of Chanel, black and white, timeless, never go out of fashion. So for me, it's about, it's not the trends, but how you would like your personal style to be and how timeless it can be.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, new figures released today show that this summer was globally the hottest ever on record. So from June to August, the average global temperature was 0.69 Celsius warmer than the long-term average. But while temperatures have seemingly soared across the world, the same, of course, can't be said true in Britain. Numbers show that the UK had its coolest summer since 2015, with the average temperature only reaching 14.37 degrees Celsius. So as global temperatures rise and Britain's temperatures fall, unlucky us, are we really in the midst of a climate crisis? Joining me now is the leader of the Climate Party, Ed Gemmell. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Ben.
Thank you for joining me. So globally, the hottest summer according to the long-term average. First question is, how long is the long-term average? How many years are we talking here?
Well, Copernicus itself, so that observation station, effectively, they've been doing it since about 1940, but records have been going back now for, around 150 years or so. So a reasonably good data set to show us where we are.
OK, since 1940?
Yeah, that's the Copernicus one, roughly. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that doesn't seem like a long time to kind of measure this. We're talking about global temperatures here. It's records. The fear is driving up. The fear-mongering is in place. We're being coerced and nudged into, this net zero drive, when we're dealing with a data set that is really a couple of decades.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Copernicus is coming out of the European Union, space programme, so it hasn't been existing for that long to some extent. So other meteorological observation stations have been running for longer. And I mean, I think a more pertinent figure is, in fact, that we've just spent 12 months. So June to June, the last 12 months, June to June, was more than 1.5 degrees C above the average back into 1850 to 1900. So that's a longer data set going over more than a century. And that's, I think, a more relevant figure, is that we have effectively heated the planet over that critical boundary of 1.5 degrees. Although, yes, it may well dip down now as we go out the El Nino, La Nina stage. We go from El Nino into La Nina, which means there's a cooling stage. So we may well dip down again. But I think that's a more relevant data set.
OK. Can I ask you, I want to give you some statements from previous years. I relay these to people, to climate guests we have over the weeks and months we have on this channel. So in 2000, a senior climate scientist, David Viner, are you familiar with him? He said climate change was so bad that children just aren't going to know what snow is by the year 2020. In 2018, Greta Thunberg tweeted that humanity would be wiped out if we didn't stop using fossil fuels, and she deleted that tweet last year. In 1971, the Washington Post reported comments from a NASA climate chief that, quote, a new ice age was coming. In 1978, the UN said rising seas could obliterate nations, including the Maldives, completely by the year 2000. In 2004, The Guardian reported on a Pentagon climate report that Britain would, quote, have a Siberian climate by 2020. And lastly, in 2009, Prince Charles at the time said we had just 96 months to save the world. Nobody's saying that global temperatures aren't rising, Ed, but how do you expect people to believe there is a crisis, and that's the key word, a crisis, when so many predictions of yesteryear have been completely wide of the mark?
OK, I think some of the people being quoted clearly are not scientists and that sort of thing. So to some extent, we take those as exclamations under an emotional, time or whatever it would be. So we can discount a few of them. Having said that, we look at the most conservative scientific body in the entire world, which is the IPCC. So they put out reports, which are 200 scientists. Those reports are then modified by governments even before they go out. So governments get the opportunity to come in and say the wording's wrong, and they generally dumb down those reports when they come out. And they came out during COP26 with Assessment Report 6, and that report came out and said that our carbon budget for staying under 1.5 degrees would effectively run out in 2028. And that has been repeated in warnings coming. And when we talk about the carbon budget, we have seen a very clear tracking in the temperature as it's going up, also related to the carbon that's going into the atmosphere, which has been accelerated by us, not only us, see, there are other things that are happening, but accelerated by us, and they're roughly tracking together. And the world's most robust, most conservative body on this has said that we've got a very big problem and our carbon budgets are running out. Now, between 1.5 and 2 degrees, that's where we get what a lot of scientists are worried about, which is the tipping points. And that's when we may lose Arctic and Antarctic ice sheets, we may lose permafrost and see a release of methane. So that's the danger point. Now, just to come in there just on 1 second, a very important figure, I think, which is critical in terms of the danger. The Antarctic, back in March this year, was 38.5 degrees above the average.
Again, how long is the average?
But I was about to say, whatever data set you take, even if you took it as only over 100 years or so, that's a vast increase. If you put 38.5 degrees, even as a freak one-off, because I know we can argue that these could be freak one-offs, but even as a freak one-off, that's a lot of temperature. OK. All right, Ed Gemmell, you're leader of the Climate Party. Thank you for joining me this evening. Appreciate it. More to come in the next hour, including news that the German government wants to send migrants to Rwanda using the facilities we paid for. When will the government get serious about stopping the small boats? I'll give you my take at 10. Don't go anywhere. This is Ben Leo's Tonight, covering for Patrick Christys, only on GB News. Now, your weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. It's been a pretty soggy day for many southern areas, but across the north and west, it's been very warm and sunny, and that theme is set to continue as we head into the weekend. As further heavy rain will arrive as a result of low pressure swirling around to the south of the UK. An easterly wind, though, will continue to bring in some low cloud to north and eastern areas, so some high and low cloud still to come once again tonight across eastern areas of the north. In the north and west, though, another dry and clear evening. Now, the heavy rain will push into parts of South Wales, northern areas of Devon as well overnight, but it should tend to fade away as we head into the morning just for a time. So it will be a cloudy but mild start to the day for most of us. Some sunshine around, however, particularly across northern areas. It's particularly parts of the Highlands down towards the central belt where we will see the best of the sunshine first thing, as well as southwestern areas of Scotland, in fact, as well as Northern Ireland. Plenty of warm sunshine temperatures already in the mid-teens at first thing. Another warm day to come for parts of northwestern England. A cloudier day, though, for parts of Wales and the Midlands. We've got the remnants of tonight's wet weather lingering in these areas first thing tomorrow, and that will probably develop into heavier showers, potentially some thundery downpours after lunchtime on Saturday. And across the south, it will be a slightly drier day, actually, but there is a risk of showers that will increase as the day goes on, as those showers push up from the near continent. So in any sunshine, it's feeling slightly warmer across the south, but still a pretty cool day for many southern and central areas. Very warm in the north and west. A more widely wet day to come on Sunday. Outbreaks of potentially torrential rainfall across much of England and Wales. It will come and go, but it could bring further disruption to travel and delays on the road. But in the north and west, it stays dry for now. However, from Monday, we return to a northwesterly wind, which brings in much cooler air. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
How would you like an extra £3,000 in your bank account each month for an entire year? Well, it could be yours with our £36,000 secret salary to be won. You'll get £36,000 in cash to do whatever you like with over the coming year. And the best news? It's totally tax-free, which means you'll get every penny to spend. For a chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Oh, hello, good evening. It's 10 p.m. I'm Ben Leo. This is Patrick Christys tonight.
I have long said before the election that I thought the Rwanda scheme was a gimmick, which is why we stood it down immediately.
Labour called Rwanda an expensive Tory gimmick. Now reports suggest Germany will take up the idea instead and use our paid-for facilities to do it.
It's time for Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper to admit that if you scrap a policy designed to save lives and you put nothing in its place, then you will be to blame.
Boris stuck the boot in, but meanwhile...
And that's why we're focusing now on going after the gangs.
The Home Secretary can't explain why the small boats just keep on coming. Also...
Save our Scampton! Save our Scampton!
Well, it's been saved because the Home Office has waved the white flag on RAF Scampton and says it will no longer house 2,000 asylum seekers in a massive win for locals. So, where will they go? Also, fans shut up about the band's ticket scandal. Liam Gallagher's words, not mine. And is this the best explanation yet behind war in the Middle East?
Palestinians, you cannot throw rockets and expect people not to defend themselves.
I'll have tomorrow's first newspaper front pages hot off the press in just a short while. And my panel tonight is former BBC and ITV political chief correspondent John Sargent, political commentator Alex Armstrong, and former Labour Party activist Susie Stride. And should the obese be made to pay for 2 airline tickets at once?
This petition is about ensuring that air travel is comfortable for everyone, regardless of their size.
Starmer scraps Rwanda and gifted it to the Germans. Next.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines just after 10 o'clock.
A man who stoked a fire outside a hotel housing asylum seekers has been given the longest sentence to date after widespread violence erupted across the UK. The 27-year-old has been jailed for 9 years. Sheffield Crown Court heard Thomas Burley engaged in what the judge described as grotesque acts of violence fuelled by malicious and ignorant social media posts. In other news, the Royal Navy serviceman who died when a Merlin helicopter ditched in the Channel has been named as Lieutenant Rodri Lation. The helicopter crashed off the coast of Dorset on Wednesday night during the training exercise with HMS Queen Elizabeth. An investigation into what caused the aircraft to ditch is ongoing. Now, the Home Secretary has chaired a summit addressing the escalating crisis of people smuggling across the English Channel. The meeting followed a tragic incident this week where 12 lives were lost when a boat capsized, the deadliest crossing this year. Yvette Cooper's been joined by key cabinet ministers, intelligence officials and law enforcement agencies to target criminal smuggling networks. She says there's a moral imperative to act and wants to see tighter collaboration with European partners.
Determined to go after the criminal gangs. They should not be able to get away with making profit in this way. And we need to build on some of the progress that's been made, increasing the work with our European partners as we've been doing in recent weeks. And even in the last few weeks, we've seen the work with Bulgaria to stop some of the boats and engines that were destined for the Channel. But we want to go much further, and that's why we have this operational summit today, and that's why we see this as such important work.
Meanwhile, Germany is considering using British-funded facilities in Rwanda to deport migrants entering the European Union. It comes as Berlin faces mounting pressure to curb illegal migration following last month's ISIS-linked stabbing at a festival. German officials think the EU should repurpose the asylum facilities which Britain set up, which were recently scrapped by Sir Keir Starmer's government. Now, in the US, a 14-year-old suspect in a school shooting has appeared in a Georgia court, facing murder charges after a deadly rampage on Wednesday. The attack left 4 people dead, including 2 teachers and 2 students, and wounded 9 others. Colt Gray, who used a semi-automatic rifle, is being held without bail and will be tried as an adult. In a rare move, his father, Colin Gray, also faces multiple charges, including involuntary manslaughter, for allegedly allowing his son to access the weapon used in the attack. And the controversy over Oasis ticket prices hasn't dampened their popularity. The band's debut album, Definitely Maybe, has returned to the top of the UK album charts a week after their reunion shows were announced. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister welcomed an investigation into Ticketmaster over their approach to dynamic ticket pricing. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Now it's back to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good evening to you. Tonight's show isn't intended to be a comedy programme, but this next revelation is, quite frankly, nothing short of a joke. Germany is considering sending asylum seekers to Rwanda using facilities paid for by the UK, weeks after our Prime Minister scrapped the scheme and called it an expensive gimmick.
The Rwanda scheme was dead and buried before it started. It's never been a deterrent, and I'm not prepared to continue with gimmicks that don't act as a deterrent.
Yeah, so you couldn't make it up, could you? Germany's migration minister says people deported from his country could be sent to the same abandoned Rwandan accommodation paid for by UK taxpayers. Downing Street said it would not comment on discussions between 2 foreign governments, but Tory leadership hopeful Robert Jenrick has called the situation a complete farce. Is he wrong? I'd go further and suggest Sir Keir Starmer is reducing this country into a global laughingstock. The British government creates a scheme admired by other countries all around the world, yet our new Labour overlords completely scrap it without an iota on how to replace it. And still, the boats come. More than 8,000 since Labour took power, more than 20,000 since the start of the year. What's our new Home Secretary got to say about it all then?
Well, we're working closely now with other European law enforcement, other governments. The Prime Minister has had serious discussions with other European leaders about the importance of us going after this organised immigration crime that is making huge profits from this dangerous trade in people. And that's why we're focusing now on going after the gangs, expanding the work with Europol and with other European law enforcement organisations. That's where we think we can make significant progress.
With respect to the Home Secretary, that clip is a prime example of how to talk a lot without saying anything. I still don't know what smash the gangs means, and yet the small boats still come. Thousands upon thousands of undocumented, unidentified people being trafficked into our country isn't just a matter of national security, it's a perpetual cycle of death. Just this week, 12 people, women and children included, died trying to make their way across the Channel. Tonight, Boris Johnson laid the blame for those deaths at the door of the Prime Minister.
With 12 more people dying in the Channel this week, including 6 children and 1 pregnant mother, and with the Germans themselves now expressing an interest in the Rwanda policy, it's time for Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper to admit that if you scrap a policy designed to save lives and you put nothing in its place, then you will be to blame for the drowning of kids at sea.
Boris wrote in his Daily Mail column, "I want you to think of the last few moments of those poor children. Imagine their utter terror, their screams for their mothers, their struggles, perhaps against bigger and stronger adults to find some piece of the wreck to cling to. Think of those drowning kids and all the 12 passengers who died, and ask yourself, who was ultimately responsible for their deaths? Yes, of course, I blame the gangs," Boris said. "I blame the authorities for letting them set off from that beach. And you know what? I'm afraid I now blame the UK government. Yes, I blame Keir Starmer. I blame Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary. I blame them because they've casually and irresponsibly cancelled the one plan that had a chance of stopping the gangs." So here we are again, another night talking about the casual surge of the world's needy in a country that already has its own problems. More buzzwords, more bluster, more promises, more summits and more meetings. And yet, the boats still come. But let's get the thoughts of my panel. John Sargent, the former BBC and ITV chief political correspondent, political commentator Alex Armstrong, and the former Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Welcome back, panel. John Sargent, what do you make of Boris Johnson's intervention tonight, directly laying the blame of those deaths at the government's door?
Well, of course, it's very convenient for him. The assumption is, and you've made the assumption almost throughout, that Rwanda would have worked, whereas for people like me, there was very little chance of it working. And if you say, and what evidence have you got for this? Why not give it a try?
So why is Germany,
why is
Germany doing it?
Hold on. But why didn't Rishi Sunak allow it to take place before the election? No, no, no. He rushed to have an election, partly because it's admitted by the people close to him that, in fact, they weren't sure that the Rwanda plan would work, that people would not be put onto planes and removed to Rwanda. For the Germans to then say this, the German ambassador makes it quite clear today in a statement that, in fact, they're not considering using the same scheme. So,
John, yes,
I need to qualify that, John, because that's actually incorrect. What he's saying is because he's responding to a tweet that says it's deportations. They aren't considering deportation. They're doing exactly what we did, which is processing asylum seekers. So that's exactly what the policy is.
Can I just answer that? Can we answer that specific point, though? No, the difference is this. What our plan was that they would go to Rwanda and there would be no chance of them returning to argue their case. They would not be allowed back. Now, what the German ambassador is saying, and what people who realise, is that if you do that, you really are going straight against the law. So, no, we'll process the whole thing and they could come back. Well, for lots of people in Britain, I didn't realise they could come back and argue their case in Britain. No, that whole deal was they would go and they would not come back. That was
John,
why people were so attracted to it.
It's a very similar scheme using UK taxpayer money.
I'll tell you what, he then said, we'll work through the UN. This is the German immigration minister. No, we foresee working with the UN and with the EU. Both the UN and the European Union formally were against the Rwanda plan. That's now forgotten because it's so
they were
easy.
against it at the time until all of these terror attacks have built up and up and
No,
up.
it's not that.
And public attitudes towards illegal immigration have changed dramatically. Look at the surge of the AFD in the last couple of weeks. They
That's
are
what
doing
they're worried
extremely
about.
well.
But that's politics. That's politics.
But quite. And of course, the EU and other institutions are worried that they are going to lose the long-term battle because they can see things like Rwanda may have acted as a deterrent. In fact, Germany's migration commissioner said the EU were considering the proposals also.
Considering
well, of course.
easy.
But if they weren't, if they thought it was going to be so terrible for them, they wouldn't have even had it on the roster
Rishi
in the first
Sunak
place.
was considering
I will say this.
In the run-up to the election, they were always busy considering it.
People can't hear you at home if you're shouting over each other.
I will say, if this does go ahead and Germany do use this scheme, it would be the ultimate embarrassment, and Keir Starmer will have to resign.
Okay, Susie,
let's see if they do. They won't.
Okay, Susie, you're giggling away at the end of the sofa.
Oh no,
What's got you tickled?
I mean, look. Ultimately, the Rwanda plan has gone. We're not going to return to it. It's like, just to say, it's like when people ask me about Brexit. Well, that ship has sailed. There's no point in keep talking about it. I think even with the Rwanda deal, I always say that people that actually have lots going on in their lives aren't going to forgive us if we keep going around the same circles of things. That we're not going to come back to that plan. But I do think, and I know you guys have been very dismissive of Yvette Cooper. You know, Yvette Cooper has, was in the last Labour government, has been around for a long time, and I actually think let's look to see. Let's look to see, actually, what our policies, the effect that our policies do have. We've been in for 2 months.
I'm sorry, Susie.
So I hear,
So did you see that clip of Yvette Cooper that's been doing the rounds today, where she's talking about smashing the gans and going to this meeting? It doesn't mean anything. None of it. It's all hot air, buzzword. As I said, it's how to talk a lot without saying anything.
I mean, no, I don't. I disagree with you. This is what I would say. Number one of the concerns that people have is you've got this massive backlog of people waiting in hotels. No one knows what's going on. We are going to employ enough people to get through that backlog. And I'm telling you now, people are going to care about that. People are going to care that we're not wasting lots of money of people sitting in hotels. And that's important.
Susie, you're right. People do want the hotel situation to end. They want it to end yesterday, I believe. The problem is that you're going to process them, and then where do they go? Where are the extra houses? Where are the extra hospitals? Where this situation doesn't end when you've processed the asylum seekers or the claims. It ends when we have answers. And what Ben's saying, rightfully, is what is the actual plan here? You can say smash the gangs as much as you like, but there is no coherent plan. And the Tories are just as guilty for this, by the way. They had no plan either. Rwanda at least acted as a deterrent. And what Boris is saying, and Boris personally, he's a lot to blame. He oversaw massive levels of illegal immigration to this country, so I don't take him for his word. But the reality is that British people have not seen a plan from politicians in this country that really makes sense.
And John, I will give Labour some credit. They have deported, I think it's in the thousands. They've sent people back home who shouldn't be here, primarily because they've changed focus. The Border Force have been instructed to change focus on people who can be sent back without issues, who aren't being persecuted, aren't fleeing war, i.e. the Vietnamese, Turkish people, Albanians. So they have got rid of, indeed, a couple of thousand people since they took power. However, that's completely pointless when we've got 1,000 people a week coming in on small boats. You've got 10 in, 1 out. So that is.
And can I just very, very quickly say, very, very before you get in there, John, just on Germany. No, I really want to hear, because John, you're an extremely intelligent man. I just read, and I had to very quickly brief over this. The CDU, the party in government in Germany, have said they visited Rwanda 9 months ago as part of their policy. Leading figures claimed the plans would deter migrants of it all.
John?
I mean, come on, John, we can't say it's not going to work if they're saying.
Hold on a moment. Look, the politics of this is weirdly simple and similar. In Germany, the coalition government may fail in the spring. What have they got? What's their problem? There's a real danger of the far right in Germany doing as well as they did recently in Thuringia.
So they're getting a policy together,
the Alternative
right?
für Deutschland. So they've got to say something to those people to say, don't worry, we're thinking about things. We're considering all sorts of actions, including Rwanda. We've heard that before.
John, well, you're absolutely
right. We know
right.
that. We've heard it from our own government.
But they're saying it would act as a deterrent. And I think there might be evidence even to prove that there was with the situation in Ireland.
Even Boris says, why can't we give this... Wait a minute, Boris says, why can't we even give Rwanda a chance? He's not saying produce the Rwanda plan. It will work.
He has a
He's
point.
not even saying that. He's just saying give it a
but
chance.
He does have a point to say give it a chance. Let's see if it does work, right?
Well, why didn't Rishi give it a chance?
Well, I
why did he run for an election?
I think a lot of people would have liked to see it give it a chance.
Well, I think the other thing, look, I always like to lean towards optimism and hope. And also, it's very interesting because we were just talking outside about the fact that, Keir Starmer, ultimately, whatever you may think about how he dealt with the riots, he dealt toughly with the riots. And it'd be very interesting to see how this former prosecutor deals with these gangs. And if he can deal with them...
He's going to use legal levers, and the problem is you cannot solve illegal immigration with lawyers. It needs deterrence.
Well, let's see. We've had 14 years of the Tories who haven't done a good job on it.
Agreed.
Let's see.
Agreed.
Let's come back to this in, a few months' time. I think you've got to give them a few months.
Susie, let me give you mine.
I would have given the Rwanda scheme a few months, just for the record.
The problem is it's gone. Get in the water.
Let me tell you how smashing the gangs is going to go. It's going to go the exact same way as the so-called war on drugs, a perpetual, endless cycle of chasing drug dealers around the world, millions, tens of millions of dollars spent trying to smash the gangs, people dying. Once a gang is snuffed out, another one's going to pop up. It's a multi-billion-pound...
So we give up then, do we, Ben? Yours accounts of despair that you, in fact, can't do anything. Wait a moment. No, what you can do is you can do it... the only thing we can do is to make sure that you move sensibly over working with the French, working with the Germans...
John, we give them £500 million a year and they go off down the working men's club sinking shops.
But if you give up... whenever I mention something, you say don't bother. People want you to bother. This government is going to be in power for 4 years at least. So take it easy. You've got to make sure that over time you keep putting the screws on the gangs, making sure you're working with the French,
so on. But this is what you've got the same rhetoric about Islamic policies, but you're saying the same thing about Rwanda. We say we should bother with it.
It's not the same.
You can't say don't bother with one thing, but we should bother with that.
It's not the same. He's been in for 2 months. You can't make that judgment. Any criticism that you guys have is a criticism of the Conservative Party.
But he has to have a plan. Where is the plan?
Don't say give up.
Listen, the viewers at home can't hear when everyone's shouting at each other.
Sorry, we're just very interested in this, and we know that the public love hearing some solutions to this, which is what I want to hear from our politicians.
Indeed. OK, great stuff. John, Alex, Susie, thank you very much. We'll be back in just a tick. Coming up, the government has handed locals victory has the government handed locals victory? I think they have. After the controversial plan to house thousands of migrants at RAF Scampton was axed, but with more and more illegals arriving on our shores, as I've just been talking about, just where are we going to put them all? Are we joined by a councillor from Scampton who was at the heart of the resistance? That's next.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo, from 11, only on GB News.
On Tuesday, the 3rd of September, at St Paul's Church in Wilton Place in London, a lucky few will sing highlights from Mozart's Don Giovanni in front of a paying audience with an orchestra and under the baton of Gary Matthewman, the conductor and artistic director of Brunswick Vocal Arts. Why is it important that young singers have this opportunity with an orchestra?
There's a gauntlet, if you like, that I think lots of young singers have to run between finishing the relative comfort of their conservatoire education and becoming firmly established as professional singers. Lots of the ones who show real verve and real promise and work really hard end up for a little bit too long being trapped in a kind of cycle of being the understudy. But some of them are ready to kind of go that extra mile and reach that next milestone. And we as a charity thought, well, what a lovely thing it would be to handpick some of these best young singers, give them intensive coaching on the role that they're going to perform, give them the chance to work with professional players for the first time, and crucially, have the thing professionally filmed and recorded. Because the first question all young singers are asked when they meet somebody influential now is, well, what's your website? Or
you have coached the singer, coaching the singer either towards a recital or towards their performance, their part in an opera. Tell me a little bit about that process.
It's a case of asking them questions which make them bring a character to life, so that when an audience member witnesses this person singing, they don't just think, oh, that's a pretty noise. They think, oh, there's something going on here that I recognise. And especially in a context like this, which is related, I think, to when people sing recitals. Say they sing 20 songs in that one evening, they've got to present 20 roles, 20 mini operatic roles, if you like. And we need to see the change in their bearing. We need to see the change in their approach to the text, as well as to the kind of the technical focus of their singing and how they produce sound.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Of the ones coming over the
Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, the Home Office announced that the plans to house asylum seekers at RAF Scampton have been scrapped. Can you believe it? The government said the plans didn't represent value for money for the taxpayer. A total of £60 million has already been spent on the site, with forecasts suggesting it would have cost a total of £122 million by the end of its use in 2027. Here's what Home Secretary Yvette Cooper had to say earlier on Scampton.
The case of Scampton, that was incredibly costly for this single site that was also strongly opposed in the local community as well. We've made clear that we need to bring down the asylum backlog, and we're already making progress in order to increase asylum decision-making and also increase returns.
Joining me now is Councillor Roger Patterson from West Lindsey District Council. Good evening to you, Roger. Is this a victory for you? Are you celebrating tonight?
I think the whole community is, yeah. I mean, it's their victory. The whole community's been opposed to this from day one, not because of the immigrants, because of the deal, what it represents for Lincolnshire and for our area. £300 million investment in an area like Lincolnshire is huge. I don't think it's ever been done before. And 1 minute we had it, and the next minute it was taken away from us. So we've been campaigning all the way along for this, for the deal. And of course, RAF Scampton is derelict. It isn't the right place to house asylum seekers or anybody. I mean, 2,000 Boy Scouts you put in there, and it still wouldn't be a good site. It's just completely the wrong place to house anybody. It's not fit for,
Roger,
for anybody to stay there.
There are 2,000 asylum seekers in Scampton. They are, correct me if I'm wrong, they are allowed to leave, aren't they, and go to the town and to the shops and so on. What's that been like for the community?
No, they haven't. They've never turned up. The Home Office have lied to us from day one. They were turning up the first year, last year. The latest one, they're turning up this summer. Well, I know it's technically still summer, but the Home Office's view all along was they are arriving this month, that month, and everything else. We actually haven't ever had any asylum seekers here. They haven't actually finished the place.
And why is Scampton so special historically? Of course, it's the home of the Dam Busters.
It was the home of the Dam Busters. It was also the Red Arrows until recently. They were the last unit there. And the V-Force, the Vulcan bomber, the famous one that took off from Port Stanley runway, flew from RAF Scampton. So it's been in existence since 1915, I believe. It's one of the most historic bases in the country. But it's not just that, it's our home. We want to preserve its history. We also have to have a future. And this offers us the best future we've ever had.
Yeah, well, I think your comments could be echoed all across the country at different sites where they are housing asylum seekers. You know, the same thing people are saying. They want to preserve their communities, the future of their communities and the country, and the integrity of where they live. Roger, I guess I would say congratulations on your victory. Roger Patterson, you are from... Yes, go on, Roger.
Could I just say something, Ben, before I go, because it would be remiss of me not to. I just thank everybody at GB News, because all the way along, since this whole nightmare started, news organisations, GB News it's been one of those people, Will from your East Midlands Reporter, and all your programmes and everybody. You've been absolutely fantastic for us. You've supported us, you've told our story, you've fought for us, and we really appreciate it, and I really do. I know you get a lot of flack from people, which is totally unfair, because you are a channel that speaks for the community, and I just wanted to say thank you.
No, you're welcome, Roger. And it's, you know, I don't think we're doing anything special or above and beyond, but it's a story that's close to communities all up and down the country. And I think, well, more broadcasters should be getting stuck into it. It shouldn't just be us. But no worries, I guess, Roger, you're welcome. And congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
OK, great. Well, coming up, tomorrow's newspaper front pages have just landed, and my panel of experts are on standby to give me their analysis. Oh, and...
This petition right here is solely about getting free seats for people of size.
Should the obese be made to pay for 2 airline tickets instead of 1? That's next. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, good evening. It's been a pretty soggy day for many southern areas, but across the north and west, it's been very warm and sunny, and that theme is set to continue as we head into the weekend, as further heavy rain will arrive as a result of low pressure swirling around to the south of the UK. An easterly wind, though, will continue to bring in some low cloud to north and eastern areas, so some high and low cloud still to come once again tonight across eastern areas of the north. In the north and west, though, another dry and clear evening. Now, the heavy rain will push into parts of South Wales, northern areas of Devon as well overnight, but it should tend to fade away as we head into the morning just for a time. So it will be a cloudy but mild start to the day for most of us. Some sunshine around, however, particularly across northern areas. It's particularly parts of the Highlands down towards the central belt where we will see the best of the sunshine first thing, as well as southwestern areas of Scotland, in fact, as well as Northern Ireland. Plenty of warm sunshine temperatures already in the mid-teens at first thing. Another warm day to come for parts of northwestern England. A cloudier day, though, for parts of Wales and the Midlands. We've got the remnants of tonight's wet weather lingering in these areas first thing tomorrow, and that will probably develop into heavier showers, potentially some thundery downpours after lunchtime on Saturday. And across the south, it will be a slightly drier day, actually, but there is a risk of showers that will increase as the day goes on, as those showers push up from the near continent. So in any sunshine, it's feeling slightly warmer across the south, but still a pretty cool day for many southern and central areas, very warm in the north and west. A more widely wet day to come on Sunday. Outbreaks of potentially torrential rainfall across much of England and Wales. It will come and go, but it could bring further disruption to travel and delays on the road. But in the north and west, it stays dry for now. However, from Monday, we return to a northwesterly wind, which brings in much cooler air. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo. The very first front pages have just been delivered, hot off the press. We'll start with the Daily Mail. Wow, look at this. None of our attack submarines at sea. Utterly dire state of the Royal Navy laid bare in shocking figures. Look, can this country get any worse? Oh, and also, here we go, disbelief and anger as England football boss says he won't sing the national anthem. All right, the Eye. Game-changer weight loss pills on the way and a major boost to the NHS. The Ozempic-style pill could be deployed to prevent obesity. The Times. Rich ready to quit UK over budget tax threat. Yeah, we covered this last week. A record 9,500 millionaires may be lost this year. And according to a report I saw a few weeks back, that was second only to China. Of course, Labour mooted to be hiking up capital gains tax in October. And the Daily Telegraph, this is the big story, isn't it? The interim England manager, who had about 40 caps playing for the Republic of Ireland, says he won't sing our national anthem. Let's get stuck into this, shall we? Lee Carsley, Alex Armstrong. He manages England and he won't sing God Save the King.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? So let's have a look at some of Sven-Göran Eriksson did. Right, and he wasn't from this country. I mean, let's remember that Lee Carsley also played for Ireland as well. But there's also other players that have played for Ireland and have sung it, including Jack Grealish and Declan Rice. So I don't know whether he's not clear whether this is a political point. He's saying it's about the game. He's saying he gets focused in on the game before he goes onto the pitch and therefore doesn't sing the anthem. But I think this is ridiculous. I mean, I think if you're the England captain, you've got to show a bit of patriotic pride before you get on the pitch. And I think the fans will want to see you do that. Of course, Fabio Capello didn't do it because he couldn't speak the language. Simple as that.
But John Sargent, even if he went by these rules he is talking about previously, where he wants to focus on the game and wants to, get into the swing of things, surely this is the biggest job of your career. You are managing England. Sing the damn anthem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's absolutely absurd. I mean, he doesn't need to grasp the whole importance of these games. It's to make sure that people who do feel proud of the country can cheer on the England team. It's meant to be harmless. It's not like war. This is why people do it. This is why people like it. If you can't follow that, if you can't see why, even when we lose, we get upset because they're our team. Yeah. But you can't then say, oh, by the way, they're not really sort of our team. We don't really need to bother with that. It's absurd. I'm afraid he needs a talking to.
Well, there we go, a talking to. Susie, should he be sacked?
I mean, I don't want to say he should be sacked. I feel a bit... I play football. I'm really big on football. I absolutely love football, and I'm one of those people that almost cry when we lose. I'm one of those. But, I mean, it just seems very odd, doesn't it? Like you say, like, if you've worked your whole life, you get to this position, just get on with it, mate. Don't, like, jeopardise your career over something like this. But I find these moments really powerful. Like, when we sing the national anthem, I get very emotional. I find it really powerful before a game of football. Oh, yeah. And there's that thing, isn't it? It's like we don't have the... What's that thing that the New Zealand rugby people do?
Oh, the hackers.
Yeah, we don't have that, but this is what we have. This is our thing. I agree with you. And it's like the power and the unity.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's a bit of common sense, isn't it? This is part of the job description, in my opinion. And it's like, despite all politics, this is the one thing everyone in Britain, England, should I say, comes together for. So
there are calls now for him to go. He's not even managed one England game. It's Jason Burt, who's the sports writer at The Telegraph, is saying if he can't sing the national anthem, he shouldn't be managing the team.
No, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, it's a bit embarrassing to say, sack him, he's only just started, but what an idiotic thing to do. And if he had decided secretly with him, quietly thinking, I don't think I'll sing it, why can't he just shut up? Well, exactly. If he says, I won't sing our anthem, it's virtually it's like saying, and I hate England, I'm just the England manager.
And the fact he has admitted this and sat down and
ridiculous.
Given an interview about it is it's just a bit dense.
It's incompetent.
The questions arising as to whether it's his ties to Ireland and that's why he won't sing it. And I think that will really raise eyebrows. Of course it is. But that seems to be the case. But like I said, other players, Jack Grealish, Declan Rice, played for Ireland. They have no problem singing the national anthem. So I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think he should go. Sorry, Lee Carsley, you should be off your chop.
That's it. Go.
Now, the Oasis ticket scandal is rumbling on. We've heard this week from the Prime Minister, who welcomes an investigation into Ticketmaster over their approach to so-called dynamic ticket pricing. But now, maybe the most important man of all, Liam Gallagher himself, has waded into the debate with a flurry of tweets this morning. He posted on X, Oasis are back, you're welcome, and I hear their attitude stinks. Good to know some things never change. The Race's frontman went a step further, though, when one fan challenged him on the ticket prices. Gallagher replied, telling the fan to shut up.
Oh, my God.
What do you make of that, Alex Armstrong?
Well, I mean, that's what you'd expect, right? I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from Oasis. It's right within their brand. But, I mean, look, I don't think you should speak to your fans like that. But, like I said, it's in brand for him. Look, the ticket price thing's been going on for a really long time. It's probably not their fault. They probably didn't even know there was dynamic pricing. A lot of these big organisations get away with murder. And they've announced 2 extra dates that are going to be, I think, a lottery. So they've done what they can to resolve the issue and played 2 extra nights.
Susie, I'll be honest, I've covered this story a lot this week, and I must say, I really don't care. I don't know why this is getting so much attention, so much media coverage, so much furore over it. I mean, it's a ban.
It's 2 things, isn't it? Like, yeah, I think it's a bit over the top, the coverage. But at the same, I mean, I was one of those people that, logged on.
Did you get
logged on, as did my brother. We all logged on. And, we're big Oasis fans. We're big Blur fans, Britpop. I was born in the 80s. The 90s was, the time for music. And so I think, I understand the feeling, because we felt really, as we would say in the East End, mugged off by the whole situation. But as you say, I'm not going to get angry at the brothers. For me, this is big corporations, and actually, let's do something about that, because I think it is a bit unfair. And hopefully I'll get a ticket the next show.
John, are you going to be in the front row of Wembley next year?
No, I can manage without. I mean, the whole point is it's this assumption that that life is fair. No, life is often unfair. There are all sorts of things you want which you can't buy, and people just this extraordinary sense in which they're all sort of kids running about bursting into tears because they can't have what they wanted. But grow up.
No, but you know what I would say?
Life is full of all sorts of things.
I agree with you.
But the assumption that all you've got to do is say something is unfair, and then we all have to start screaming and throwing phones across the room and everything else. It's not as simple as...
But you know what's slightly odd was you selected a ticket, it said 150 quid, you went all the way through, got to the checkout, and then it said 350. And I think if you went to book a plane ticket and it said 150, and then it suddenly vamped it up by, double, that's what was very strange.
That happened to me this week. I'm not going to name the holiday firm, but I booked a holiday. I mean, we've had no summer whatsoever, so I thought, stuff this, I'm going to book a holiday for the next couple of months. Going to the Canaries somewhere. Anyway, nice. I got a price the day before, and I thought, oh, that's OK, not bad. I went to book it the next day, less than 24 hours later, and it had jumped by about £800. I don't know why.
Wow.
But cover up your IP address, that's what it is.
Yeah, sometimes you have to clear the cookies or something.
Cookies, They track you, and then they put your prices up.
They knew that you were going. They knew that you were going for that, and you'd affect others, Ben.
Yeah, they want to get your net. They want to get your carbon emissions down. That's what they want.
What a scam! Broken Britain at its finest. Anyway, coming up, I'll have the rest of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. More have just dropped, hot off the press. And by the way, has the American icon Joan Rivers got the best explanation yet for war in the Middle East?
Palestinians, you cannot throw rockets and expect people not to defend themselves.
Now, of course, just to be very clear, that was 10 years ago, so some people online are saying Joan was speaking well before her time, but it's doing the rounds again online. Everybody's saying that clip is the best explanation yet about the war in the Middle East. All that and much more in just a few minutes.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Luke Douglas Hugh is a plogger. It's the act of jogging and picking up litter at the same time.
Ah, I thought it had something to do with cycling, but I was thinking of recycling. You better explain what the term is.
Plogging originates really as an expression from Sweden, from someone called Erik Alström, who combined the two words of plocka uppa in Swedish and jogging, so plogging.
And what does plog uppa mean?
Picking up.
Oh, I see.
Oh, I see.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Do you take a bag with you or something and you pick up rubbish? There you go.
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of being a jogger, how do you combine the two? Because joggers wouldn't want to
keep up the pace,
Yeah, they wouldn't want
you?
to keep stopping to pick stuff up, would they?
I'm the coastline runner. I run the coast collecting plastic pollution.
Which
mainly.
coast?
Well, I've done the whole of the East Coast, from Lowestoft to Leith.
Wow.
And then cut across from Edinburgh to Glasgow on the Grand Union Canal.
Yeah.
A few years ago, someone said, Luke, don't get all grand and stuff. You're not the coastline runner, you're just a plogger. And I thought, hang on a minute, what's that? And I looked into it, and I realised that that's what I was doing.
Do you do it entirely on your own, or do you do it in groups?
I did. I originally started on my own. I got clapped off by a mayor in Great Yarmouth, but now more and more people join me, and I.
What I find interesting is that, I mean, jogging, you could say, is just something you do for yourself, for your body, but what you're doing is something extra. I mean, you're making a difference. Do you think you make much of a difference?
No. To be honest, I don't. I think I'm making a difference in raising awareness of not polluting our beaches so much.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. More newspapers have just dropped hot off the press. The Daily Mirror says, I warned bosses someone would die. Top Gear star Chris Harris claims he warns there would be a death on the show before Freddie Flintoff's now infamous crash. The Daily Star, you OK, Gandalf? Hobbit star Sir Ian McKellen has called the late Queen mad, and he's received a bit of stick from it. Nice pun from the Star there. And the Daily Express carries that same story. Give back your gong. Fury as Sir Ian badmouths the late Queen. Let's get stuck into this one, shall we? This was it's part of a wider-ranging interview with The Times where McKellen said that he took Prince Harry's side amid the royal row, said that King Charles was, what was the quote, he was damaged, and the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth, was rude and quite mad in her later years, Alex.
Oh, this is absolutely ridiculous. He's off his rocker. I mean, he should just shut up. I mean, a well-respected actor who has obviously got... I don't know what award he's been given, actually. I'm not entirely sure, but he obviously Sir Ian McKellen.
Yes.
Just to say that about the late Queen as well, one of the most beloved monarchs of many generations, and someone that everyone in our country still feels a great affinity to, who's only just recently passed away. It's a ridiculous thing to say. I mean, imagine if he'd be rolling in his grave if someone said that about him after he passed away. I just think this is ridiculous. If he doesn't like the royal family and he does think the king is damaged and the Queen was mad, he should hand back his awards.
Susie, why are people saying silly things in public, even if they believe them? Lee Carsley saying he won't sing the national anthem despite being the England manager. Now, Ian McKellen with this interview. What's wrong with...
I know, it's really strange, isn't it? Like, I mean, I've actually met Sir Ian McKellen a number of times. He's a really nice guy. He's come down to our youth club and judged art competitions. He's really lovely. So and it is very strange because even whether you're for or against the royal family, you know, she was universally loved. I actually met the Queen. She came to my school like 20 years ago, you know, and she was just universally loved and respected, and now she's passed away, and you just can't speak ill of someone like that. I can't work out if this has been taken grossly out of context. That's the only thing I could say.
Well, no, it hasn't. No, it was
well, then it is very silly, and he'll judge.
I suppose in his defence, it's free speech. He can say what he wants. Of course he can. We back it. But I just wonder why... What reward are you getting out of that?
I think it's a sign of age, isn't it? He's become irresponsible.
How old is he? He's 85.
I know, but he doesn't... You gets the impression with me that he just thinks, I've sort of toed the line, I've done this. And also the recent publicity when he falls off the stage, where suddenly there's got enormous well of support, as if he had died.
Yes,
and of course, I think he probably thought, you know, I can say things now, and I really can. You mean I don't really like the Queen, you know? And it's like a child. Actors are a bit childish anyway. I know a bit about. I work with them. There is an element always of playing, and they play like children. And you just feel with him, it's heady stuff, isn't it? He's 85. Do what he likes, say what he likes, but we shouldn't take it seriously.
OK. Well, let me know what you think about this next clip, because a plus-sized man struggling to fit into his seat on an aeroplane got snapped by a fellow passenger, provoking fierce debate online. So this photo was uploaded to Facebook and it was taken on a flight from Helsinki to Copenhagen on Monday. And if you're listening on radio, it shows he's a huge man.
Two-seat man.
Taking up pretty much a seat and a half, squashing the guy next to him on an aeroplane. It shows the man protruding into the aisle with passengers having to navigate around him. Some have said he should have paid for 2 seats, whereas some blame the airlines for not increasing the size of seats as humans get fatter. Come off it. So should the obese flyers pay for 2 seats? Adam?
Yes, they absolutely should. This is ridiculous. It's your problem, not everyone else's around you. And we celebrate obesity in this absolute mad world. We start saying, oh, I saw this article about Carnival where they say plus-size people are celebrated at Notting Hill Carnival. It's ridiculous. We don't celebrate cancer. Obesity kills hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, and we've got to stop normalising it. And yes, you should pay for 2 seats. I'm sorry.
John?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad thing to say, but of course they should pay for 2 seats. People I know who are overweight realise that this is an endless inconvenience for other people. I was sitting next to someone the other day on the tube, enormous guy. Yeah. And I thought, well, look, it's all very well.
Should pay for 2 tickets, shouldn't he?
And I thought, you can't do it on the underground. You can't, you can't say, look, this is my seat as well.
Yeah.
And you say something about, I get a priority seat because I'm so old. But even so, there's this guy. And you did feel, and he was oblivious to this, meaning I can sit here, but actually you can't. The truth is that if you're that big, be careful.
Maybe, Susie, they should pay for extra weight. You know, if you get an extra suitcase on the plane, I mean, surely his weight's compared to, say, the average person. Not only are you taking up 2 seats, you're adding a vast load of weight to the plane as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to comment on it. I don't know what I think about this. It makes me feel a bit sad. But what I do think, I do think we have to have a revolution on this, don't we? You can't have, like you say, being overweight kills, and actually I'm for the sugar tax, and people can, and I'm for lots and lots of things we can do around public health and education and encouraging people to exercise and maybe these, weight loss injection things or whatever that have come out, But I'm for that because actually I think we do need to tackle this, and I think it is sad that people get into that state where they are that big. That's not good for anybody.
No.
So
we do
whether or not
stop celebrating it, though. I find it one of the most ridiculous things. You've got all these massive corporations who are flouting very, very obese people as sort of a lifestyle, and it's become... Calvin Klein, for example. Calvin Klein put billboards up with very, very large models and saying it's OK.
Well, it should be stopped.
Well, it should be stopped. You're right, John.
I think they're probably trying to come against the whole thing of, we've got a massive problem with, kids with eating disorders, massive growth in that amongst girls and boys. I've worked in schools, and it's, crazy. And so they're trying to do something around that and these size zero models, which also is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But really, the answer is, we can actually have a national strategy on this, where in the next 10 years you see massive change, and we don't have an obesity rate that is actually greater than America.
I hope so.
I think we need to, aside from just overeating, because that is the cause of gaining fat, we talk about sugar tax and salt tax. I think it's a load of rubbish. I think it's calories in, calories out. But aside from sort of the semantics of it, I think overeating and being obese it's an addiction. So I think we really need to focus more on... I'm not an expert, by the way, of course. I'm not a health expert. But I think we need to focus more on why people are going to food to comfort themselves. What trauma are they trying to cover?
Well,
Same with alcoholism.
Mental health needs, exactly. We've got a mental health crisis in this country, and actually we can do something about it. And I've worked for years in schools. You can turn people's lives around. A lot of the time they need one person, a trusted adult, to speak to get stuff off their chest, to tell them you're OK, you're not strange, you might have some quirks, but so do we all. And you're absolutely right. There are things that we can do, and, I hope, Labour do begin to do them.
OK. Let me just show you this quick clip that's been doing the rounds online again. It's from 10 years ago. It's from Joan Rivers, who, of course, isn't with us anymore. But people are saying now that it's the best explanation behind the war in the Middle East. Take a look at this.
I'm trying to get celebrity reactions to what's going on with the Palestinians and Israelis right now.
Let me just tell you, if New Jersey were firing rockets into New York, we would wipe them out. I am so bored. If we heard they were digging tunnels from New Jersey to New York, we would get rid of Jersey. So I don't want to hear anymore. Oh, we'll do a partial truce. The Palestinians, you cannot throw rockets and expect people not to defend themselves.
Interesting. GBNews.com/Your Say. Let me know what you think about her comments. It's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. John Sargent, your Greatest Britain, please.
Dwayne Fields, you may not have heard from him, but I hope you will hear more about him. He's the new Chief Scout.
Yes.
He seems admirable guy. He's already given some nice interviews, and some of the young people are saying how much he relates to them.
Yeah, and he took over from Bear Grylls, I think, who's resigned after 15 years in the job. Alex, your Greatest Britain?
Well, I have a very special Greatest Britain tonight. It's a man who served 40 years in the media industry, reporting on BBC, Dancing with the Stars. It's, of course, John Sargent. He's sitting right next to me here.
Oh, this is too much.
There you are, John Sargent. What a legend. We have to... Come on, greatest Briton for sure.
John, very quickly, how do you look back at your career with fondness? Any... what are you particularly proud of?
I tell you what I do look back on with pride, with sort of unusual things, particularly, I suppose. I wasn't a great war reporter, but I did go to wars, and I look back on that and think, God, would I do that now? It's too frightening. And I just think, but I did go to Vietnam, I did go to these things, and I may not have been brilliant doing it, but I went.
Wow, good stuff. Susie, your greatest Briton?
I feel like mine's a little bit controversial, but I was going to say Tony Blair, obviously released a new book, lots of interviews this week, lots of controversial things about Tony Blair, lots of things that I don't agree with about Tony Blair and different things that he did, but I think you can't say the man didn't have vision, you can't say the man didn't have a mission, and you can't say that he didn't actually change many things in this country for the better, including lots of schools in my area and lots of opportunities for young people, etc. And I hate the way that he's always, you know, done down. I think history will look back and actually speak well of him.
Well, he certainly got stuff done, didn't he? I mean, uncontrolled mass migration, opening the floodgates. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's not going to be Tony Blair, unfortunately. John, any other day, I would say you would be our greatest Briton because, of course, you are a legendary journalist. You have expertise far exceeding...
And this is my last day.
It's your last show, of course, as well, and we're going to be very sad to lose you. So any other day, it would be you. But I'm going to do something special tonight. It's going to be all the young kids who are starting school this September, including my boy Jude, who his first day at school yesterday, he went for, I think it was 2 hours. Today he did a couple of more hours, and from next week they'll be going to full days. Not just to Jude, I'm not going to be that narcissistic, but to all the young kids, the little boys and girls, moving on to the next stage of life at school, all the proud grandparents and the parents seeing them off as well. This is to you. Good luck and have the best of fun at school. And, of course, Jude, I love you very much. And I know viewers sometimes get a bit miffed that I bang on about my kids so much, but sorry, I love them, so you can't blame me.
Do it, it's important.
John, your Union Jackass, please.
Well, Jackass, they're one of those companies, you know, accused of behaving really badly in terms of the cladding argument, providing the cladding and the disaster, you know, in Kensington. All of these people say that it's not their responsibility. So I just think, OK, that we'll, you know, let's just make quite clear who the jackass is. One of them, iconic.
Yeah, a completely damning inquiry into Grenfell. Failures all across the board. Alex?
Mine's Tony Blair. Funnily enough, Susie, sorry. He's just come out and recently did an interview talking about immigration, takes no responsibility for his role, obviously, in causing mass migration into Britain, and I thought that was rather cheeky of him.
OK, Susie, your Union Jackass?
Jenrick. For a number of reasons, I'm not a fan of Jenrick. I really hope he does not win the Tory leadership election. I obviously don't have a vote in it. But I'm not a fan of his... You know, I know you're not a fan necessarily of big developments that are in areas that are maybe overdeveloped, but, you know, they've just pushed through something, and he was part of, back in the day, some of the dodgy dealings around that. So... Not a fan of him at all.
Tony Blair, no Robert Jenrick. But he had the most votes in the leadership contest in the first round, 28 votes, I think.
Yeah.
OK, it's going to be Tony Blair, obviously.
What do you mean, Grenfell?
Do I need to explain why Tony Blair? No, I don't think so. Yeah, there we go. Listen, panel, thank you very much tonight. John, you've got 20 seconds. It's your last show tonight. Have you had fun at GB News?
A lot of fun, no. I don't always agree with people on the panel, you may have noticed that.
I'm here, yeah.
Or the presenters, particularly. But what I have enjoyed is some terrific arguments and some very good times in terms of discussion.
Yeah. OK, well, thank you for your service. We've loved you. And, Alex, thank you for tonight. Susie as well. Mark Dolan will be here from tomorrow from 9 p.m. Next up, it's Headliners. Thank you for tuning in and for all your comments. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Here's your weather with Annie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. It's been a pretty soggy day for many southern areas, but across the north and west, it's been very warm and sunny, and that theme is set to continue as we head into the weekend. As further heavy rain will arrive as a result of low pressure swirling around to the south of the UK. An easterly wind, though, will continue to bring in some low cloud to north and eastern areas, so some high and low cloud still to come once again tonight across eastern areas of the north. In the north and west, though, another dry and clear evening. morning. Now, the heavy rain will push into parts of South Wales, northern areas of Devon as well overnight, but it should tend to fade away as we head into the morning just for a time. So it will be a cloudy but mild start to the day for most of us. Some sunshine around, however, particularly across northern areas. It's particularly parts of the Highlands down towards the central belt where we will see the best of the sunshine first thing, as well as southwestern areas of Scotland, in fact, as well as Northern Ireland. Plenty of warm sunshine temperatures already in the mid-teens at first thing. Another warm day to come for parts of northwestern England. A cloudier day, though, for parts of Wales and the Midlands. We've got the remnants of tonight's wet weather lingering in these areas first thing tomorrow, and that will probably develop into heavier showers, potentially some thundery downpours after lunchtime on Saturday. And across the south, it will be a slightly drier day, actually, but there is a risk of showers that will increase as the day goes on, as those showers push up from the near continent. So in any sunshine, it's feeling slightly warmer across the south, but still a pretty cool day for many southern and central areas, very warm in the north and west. A more widely wet day to come on Sunday. Outbreaks.
This is your chance to win, and good luck. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Many happy memories, and 9 in 10 Brits say certain foods evoke feelings of childhood nostalgia, with the mousse-like powdered dessert, Angel Delight, the most loved. Joining us now.
Surprised by that.
Yeah, well, Angel Delight.
I'm surprised it's number one. Yes, very surprised. Well, to talk us through all of this is creator of the Crazy Sexy Food podcast, Hannah Harley-Young. Morning.
Hi. I've brought a selection of things that really define my childhood, particularly the Viennetta ice cream. And I have brought you some butterscotch Angel Delight.
Yay!
I'm going to expose myself live on camera and say that I've never tried Angel Delight.
Hannah?
I know. I don't know what that says about me.
I thought that was apple puree, actually. I'm so excited. Is it good? Here we
Oh,
go.
my goodness.
Did I make it okay?
Oh, yeah. But to be fair, Hannah, it's not that hard to make.
Well,